see here. Okay, so I think I'm live again. Just a second. All right, so there I am. I'll put that thing down because it always messes me up. All right, so hey people, Russ Jensen. So now we're going to start talking about how we actually start implementing some of this information, this knowledge that we have into real world situations, real world application. Now, and we need to understand that this information is absolutely critical to every aspect of your modern society. Determining what's going on, what's happening. Now, cannabis use, I guess that's the topic of my book and the topic of this, a lot of this information that we're using, but we have to start understanding how we can possibly use some of this information to help us in that particular aspect in relationship to uh, our use of, possession of, transportation of, distribution of, cultivation of that particular substance that right now is considered to be illegal at the federal level everywhere. And then, I think 27 states have, well, I don't really know what the number is. A lot of them, okay? A few states that have it outright. Colorado, I think, and uh, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, one of those back there that just did it the same thing, recreational use and everything else. So we start talking about ways we start helping ourselves. We find ourselves in a situation where we're up against law enforcement, we're up against criminal indictments, criminal actions being taken against us. The number one thing we need to start doing is challenging jurisdiction and see if perhaps maybe we can't find some things there that can help us by challenging jurisdiction. Now, jurisdiction goes to your status, the domain that you're standing in, which then creates jurisdiction, which then creates authority. Now, here in the United States of America, where I'm at, Republic of Utah, where I think I'm at, we have that document called Constitution. The problem that your states have, along with the federal group of people, is that they have violated egregiously that document known as the Constitution for the United States and the Constitution for the United States of America. And your states have done the same thing also. Now, that's the power of that book, Law of Nations. We can go there and see what it says about what happens when the sovereignty is limited and regulated by the fundamental laws of the state constitutions, and your states have one. Every state in the union has one, along with the federal group. What is the Constitution? It shows the sovereigns, the sovereignty, the government, the extent and bounds of their power and the manner in which they are to exert it. That's what the Constitution is. And they must consider those as fundamental laws, as inviolable, immutable, cannot be changed without going through a specific process, the amendment process. And the nature of that document, the nature of those agreements, those compacts, government officials absolutely are bound to them. And once they deviate from them, operate outside those, their commands become unjust. They become a criminal abuse of the power with which they have been entrusted. And no amount of legislation can make a criminal act uncriminal, especially if it's done to provide protection for the very individuals that have been engaging in criminal activity. I'm going to show that in a number of ways over the next few days, weeks, and months, and what they're doing and what they've done. So a simple reading of your Constitution of the United States of America, simple understanding of basic logic, and a simple understanding of how an application of those fundamental rules and regulations laid out in the Constitution of the United States of America, how it has to apply to the states, and how they're operating outside of that right now. They have no authority, none, that's not criminal in nature, not criminal in its action. They don't have authority to operate their court systems the way that they are. They don't have authority to come kick in your door, because that law enforcement agency has to get its jurisdictional authority through the local court. Why? Because when they arrest you, they have to take you in front of a lawful magistrate. That's one of the principles of habeas corpus. Now, as far as I know, the state of Utah, Constitutional Organic Republic of Utah, has never seceded from the Union. And the federal Constitution, the national Constitution, whatever you want to call it, Constitution of the United States of America, Constitution of the United States, is still in force. And that's one of the provisions that has never been repealed, hasn't been amended, habeas corpus. Now, one more thing too, and then I'll get back. I'll go looking at it. We'll show you right in your Constitution too a few things to start talking about how we can use that. Okay? But this book, Law of Nations, in Book 1, talks about our very fact that we may withdraw from obedience if the sovereignty, those sovereigns acting in sovereignty, have abused that, have operated outside their authority. If the authority of the sovereignty is limited and regulated by fundamental laws, the sovereigns, or governmental officials, on exceeding the bounds prescribed to them, they command without any right, and even without a just title. The nation, that's the people, being you, are not obliged to obey them, but may resist their unjust attempts. As soon as the sovereigns or sovereignty attack the Constitution of the state, they break the contract which bound the people to them. The people become free by the act of the sovereign and can no longer view them but as a usurper who would load them with oppression. Okay, that's what's happened. The definition of the word attack, that's to set upon with violent force, to start to work on with purpose and vigor, as in to attack a problem, okay? To act on in a detrimental way to cause harm to. You don't think that's what your government officials have been doing to you for years, slowly creeping away. Huh? In fact, your founders used some of that very language in that document, the Declaration of Independence. Okay? Talks about right there in the Law of Nations about the long, slow train of abuses, how they don't work to those things openly. Very uncommon to see the laws and constitution of the state openly and boldly opposed. This is against silent, gradual attacks that a nation ought to be particularly on its guard. Okay? We overlook the changes that insensibly happen by a long train of steps that are but slightly marked. And that's what's happened. Doesn't change the fact that they are operating outside of constitutional authority right now in every state in the union. They have no constitutional authority. Now, they claim that they do, but even going through the so-called authority of Congress, federal territories, what they claim they try to turn you into, your state into, they still don't have permission to bring admiralty or maritime forms of law into the individual nation states, republics. They don't have that permission. Your state constitution does not allow for that either. It certainly doesn't allow for Roman civil law, the law of statutes. Now they're claiming they're doing it under non-constitutional, legislative, administrative tribunals. Even then would have to be dealing with what? Administrative classes, a class of persons, a subject class of persons, an officer, employee, agent of your individual state. This is where it becomes so important to understand what's happened as far as your monetary system, which I've already talked about. You'll read, it's not very hard to go read it right there where it talks about what happens. Okay? What they've tried to do through the use of money, these Federal Reserve notes, is to convert you into a employee, officer, agent of the United States. And then overlaying that as a federal territory, a political association known as the state of Utah. The only explanation of why it is that my local sovereignty, my local governance, would force me to be in violation of a federal legislative act known as the Social Security Act that states very specifically that that number is to be used for no other purpose other than purposes of the Social Security Administration. And yet my state, your state, now requires that information on just about everything, any kind of a governmental form, driver's license, voter registration, anything else. My government is forcing me to be a criminal. How is that possible? Now, we start understanding about the fact that they've done that. We need to challenge jurisdiction. And one of the ways that we need to start doing that is trying to understand, asking the question about what form of law gives them their jurisdictional authority. What form of law it is that I can use to defend myself. What form of law it is that I can use to prosecute or bring my cases, even in civil cases, or in a criminal situation. We're utilizing. And nowhere in your Constitution for the United States does it say anything about a non-constitutional legislative administrative jurisdiction. Article 3, the only place in the Constitution, the United States of America, Constitution of the United States, that grants judicial power and authority and talks about the specific types of law. The only kind of law that's applicable anywhere in the United States of America and or the United States, including every single union member, every single independent nation state, republic, the member of that union known as the United States of America. So Article 3, Section 2, the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution. All cases arising under this Constitution. So the only way that I can't have law and equity is if I'm not under this Constitution. All cases affecting ambassadors or other public ministers and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction. Admiralty and maritime jurisdiction apply to who? Ambassadors, public ministers, consuls, and specifically for United States. There's no grant of authority anywhere for your state to operate maritime or admiralty. They don't have permission to do so. It was never granted to them as a law forum, ever. Okay? Now, I'll explain that here in just a second. And we're taking that, getting that information directly from your Supreme Court, which has concluded there are three case categories other than the judicial authority pertaining to the geographical United States, which would be District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the territories. So you've got your cases at law, which is common law, or an equity. Equity is about, or chance, what they call that. But basically, it's where the court has the ability to, it's based on what's fair and right. Okay? Often based on customs of an area where there is no real remedy in common law, but just based on what would be considered to be fair and right. Okay? Goes back to our duty to be honorable and true. Right? So those are considered to be in that scope of what we say arising under. The arising under clause is what they call it. You know, admiralty, maritime, ambassadors and consuls, international affairs, treaties, affairs at sea, they are not within the scope of the arising under clause. Okay? Because what does it say? All cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution. Then, semicolon, and a dash, judicial power shall extend to all cases affecting ambassadors, public ministers, and consuls, all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction. Now, we can go look at the American jurisprudence and things like that, but I want to get too carried away in that because there's some pretty good analysis that we can provide later on about that specific thing. You should have to take my word for it right now because we got to start thinking about these things. Okay, so there's also the separation of powers doctrine, which pretty much prevents someone from working in the federal government to be able to work in the state government at the same time, or state government personnel to work with the federal government at the same time. So we need to start asking ourselves then, what is going on? Does the Constitution for the United States of America, is it valid or not? Is my state a party to that or not? Are they bound to that or not? Because it would appear that they aren't. They're in direct violation of, let's see here. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Oh, wait, I was on the right page, sorry. But they're in direct violation of Article 1, Section 10. It talks about no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Now, what are they doing? They allow Federal Reserve notes to be utilized. It said it right there. Where is it that it gave even Congress, federal Congress, the ability to do that? And they say, we can have it printed for us. That's fine. For your area. Okay. Where is it that in this Constitution of the United States of America that gives states right to bring a foreign form of law, Roman civil statute law, bring that to bear against the people? Doesn't give them authority to do that anywhere. And if you read your state constitutions, they don't have that authority either. So we start challenging jurisdictional authority by asking some of those very specific questions. There's a way that we do that. We put it into the court and ask them that question. Where are you getting your authority from? You only have two choices out here in the state, either under at law or equity. You don't get vice admiralty. You don't get maritime out here. Nowhere. And if you're operating in that, you're operating unlawfully. You're operating as a piracy, a criminal enterprise, operating outside the mandates of the provisions of the definitions of the authority which have been granted to you. You're attacking the Constitution of the state. You're violating its laws. That's a capital crime. You're at war with me, aren't you? You don't have authority except by force, which is what you're doing. Now, we'll start filing, making requests, putting in these requests for information. They don't ever answer us. They always ignore it because they can't answer the question. Challenging jurisdiction, where they get their authority to say that the use of a plant which has existed on this planet long before governments were ever created, and long before this criminal enterprise which has taken over the government for the United States, the government for the state of Utah, under false pretenses, under lie, under duress, under violence, don't have lawful authority to tell me that I cannot use that you can overcome my rights remaining from a primitive state of community, a right which I cannot be deprived ever, my right of necessity, which makes anything that might otherwise be unlawful, lawful, if it's required by me to fulfill one of my indispensable obligations, and my right of self-preservation, my right of personal worship, my right of working towards my perfection, the very things that you as government were formed to protect me, to allow me, to help me achieve those. That's the only authority you have. You don't have authority for statutes. You don't have authority for Roman civil law. You don't have authority to kick in my door because I'm using a plant. Now you do, like I said, by force, but we start challenging your jurisdiction through the proper processes. And you guys have been pretty good at being able to lie, but you can't do that any longer. We know your mechanisms. We know the methods that you've used. Okay? We're going to force you to be honorable and true to us. Explain to us what's going on. You don't have permission to do those things to me, my friends, my neighbors, my kids. And you certainly don't have authority while you allow other criminals engaging in known criminal activity. In fact, your own legislative bodies, your own political subdivisions here in the state of Utah, your cities, your counties, your school districts, engaging in massive embezzlement in your own published reports, your comprehensive annual financial reports, the accounting done according to the terms of GAAP, generally accepted accounting practices. Nowhere in GAAP does it allow for you to take future liabilities, apply that against current assets, remove those funds off the balance sheet. You want to fund future liabilities? No problem. Those monies need to be sitting in an account of some kind. It remains on the balance sheet. They can be accounted for at any time. You don't have permission to steal from me those funds and take them off the balance sheet and then tell me it's none of my business. Federal territory or not. You are engaging in criminal activity as an enterprise according to definitions of the racketeering, influence, corruption acts, the RICO. You don't have sovereign immunity for engaging in criminal activities. I don't care if all 560 of you get together and say it's okay. It's not okay. You don't have my permission, my consent to you, my delegation of my sovereign authority that you operate upon has been withdrawn from you. Till further notice that you provide to me sufficient information, sufficient answers to my questions about your jurisdictional authority, number one. Not that difficult, people. That's how we have to talk to our government. They don't have permission to do these things. To steal from you, lie to you, murder you, destroy the lives of your children. For what? While they allow their corporate buddies, their corporate persons that they've created, to damage, real damage, viable damage. Damage is prosecutable as torts under common law. That's part of the reason why they try to erect these rules of statute to protect themselves from their criminal activities that they have brought upon the people, the humanity of this planet everywhere. Now, this book, Law of Nations, it is law everywhere on this planet. It's natural law, been codified, has applied to sovereigns and sovereignty. It's immutable, cannot be changed, can't be legislated away, can't be ignored. But it must be understood, must be studied, must be brought to bear in our defense. So, challenging subject matter jurisdiction, challenging in person or in personam jurisdiction, and territorial jurisdiction is the very first thing that we're going to start learning how to do. Now, typically what happens, your little judge magistrate, he knows all these things. He'll say, yeah, duly noted, the court still has jurisdiction. But there are rules promulgated by your Supreme Court that they have to operate by. One of those is once jurisdiction has been challenged, it must be proved. It cannot be assumed. And proved means it must be proved in the record by proper notice, by proper information, by showing the lineage of delegation of authority. You don't get to just keep assuming these things, keeping us in the dark, trying to bamboozle us with all these big words. 10 trillion fucking statutes and regulations and definitions all over the place. Most of your stuff's void for vagueness, even if you were in the proper law forums. So that's what we're going to start studying, start teaching. We're putting up on my some of these other sites on how to challenge jurisdiction. That's one of the things that we're doing. So we're going to be making demands, start getting information, demanding from our elected officials or unelected officials to know what form of government they have instituted. And if they say, well, they're still operating under the Constitution of the United States of America, well, they got a big problem. Then we're going to start prosecuting them for violation of that, making anything but gold and silver as payment of debt. The violation of the law of the land, elected or not. You don't have permission to violate that document. Not one single provision in it, ever. Now, they've done a good job in fooling people. They've done a good job in putting everybody off. Good job in hiding all these things, sliding this stuff into place, using their fractional reserve banking, playing upon the greed of men. Ever wonder why crime doesn't go any down in your local area? Well, because then, then they won't need us next year. We can't get all the fancy new tools, toys, cars, surveillance equipment. Crime goes down. Gee, we can't do that. They have no interest in suppressing crime. They have a continued interest in farming you as a resource for them. No more. We live in a land predicated upon the rule of law. We don't. And if we don't, well, that means there's no rules. No rules means, gee, that's a big problem. Now, I don't want to see that. But they're the ones that are calling the shots, laying out the rules of the game. And right now, law hasn't happened to be one of them because they have violated egregiously, continuously, through deception, through force, Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the United States, and here in the Republic of Utah, the Constitution for the Republic of Utah has been violated egregiously by those people, those other members of society that have been delegated some authority to act on our behalf, have abused that authority, turned the police power of the state against the very individuals that are designed to have a duty to protect. And they've done it in collusion with others. And they've done it with a specific purpose and intent to cause damage and harm. They don't have immunity. They don't have permission, okay, to not tell us the truth when we ask these questions. So, challenging jurisdiction. The next thing we'll start talking about too is bringing out counterclaims for their violations, their damages to us by their failure, number one, to protect us, and for their attacking, committing capital crimes against society by violating the laws and the Constitution of the state, which they have done. They think because they can have a bunch of them that were voted into office and sit up there and write rules and regulations to protect themselves while they infringe upon, steal from, encroach, violate life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all those unalienable, unalienable rights, naturally occurring rights. They lie to me, force me to be a criminal by forcing me to use a number that doesn't belong to me, forcing me to use a method of exchange to convert my status from one of a independent, individual, conscious awareness, sovereign authority, member of society into one of their public officers. To gain jurisdiction over me, to bring upon me rules, regulations, and a form of law which they are not allowed to use. Prohibited. And that prohibition has never been repealed, it's never been amended. So, I'll start posting up my documents so people can read them. Probably a little easier than listening to me rant and rave all over the place because I get so upset when I recognize, start thinking about the atrocities that have been imposed, that have been brought upon us, the suffering. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people that don't violate. There are. But most of those people, you're in jails today, are there for non-violent, non-destructive possession of a plant. And then they put them in, they use the police power of the state to scoop them up and then put them in for-profit prisons and force those people to work, steal their life force energy, the value they create, to provide a profit for another small group. That, people, slavery. That's human trafficking. That's what your government is involved in. And you are too. You're an accomplice for your failure to speak out. So, challenging jurisdiction, demanding truth and honesty from our elected officials or our unelected officials. Those are two things. And then next we'll start talking about bringing counterclaims. What rights that we have to do that? So, once again, pledging you my life, my fortune, my sacred honor, whatever any of those things mean. Do what I can to help educate people, to get people to wake up and read. Act while we still have the chance to do so, because they're working overtime while you're watching these TV shows, while you're spending hours on Facebook watching cats chase around a fucking tree. These people working overtime, and they've got millions of them working against us to restrict you, to limit you, to enslave you. Lie to you about airplanes crashing in the Pentagon. Not a single evidence, not one shred of evidence of a commercial airliner hit that building. Yet they continue on with that lie. How much longer are you going to sit by and allow that to happen? All right. Talk to you next time. Love everybody.